Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we have another special segment, courtesy of SpaceX, the launching and attempted landing of their Starship SN9 test vehicle. SpaceX is attempting to duplicate its prior groundbreaking SN8 launch, this time to a slightly lower 10-kilometer ceiling. SN9 is powered by 3 Raptor engines during ascent. As with SN8, the flight plan calls for each engine to shut down in sequence prior to the vehicle reaching apogee, approximately 10 km in altitude. SN9 will perform a propellant transition to the internal header tanks, which hold landing propellant, before reorienting itself for re-entry and a controlled descent and attempted vertical landing. Starship, when completed, will be the second stage of a fully reusable Earth-to-orbit launch system that would significantly reduce the high cost of orbital launches and enable the eventual settlement of Mars and other planetary bodies. The Starship itself is only a second stage. It is to be launched above a Starship Heavy booster. As envisioned, the Heavy booster will return to Earth and land vertically in the manner of current SpaceX Falcon 9 rockets. The second stage Starship, however, will be able to reach orbit with sufficient fuel to deorbit and re-land using a novel aerobraking mechanism whereby it reorients to a horizontal inclination during atmospheric re-entry with the use of its 4 flaps, Raptor engines, and cold gas thrusters. Just prior to landing, it reverts to a vertical orientation, reignite its engines at the final moment to deaccelerate to touch down vertically. Starship is specifically designed by SpaceX so that it can be refueled in space and can be landed at destinations across the solar system where prepared surfaces or runways do not exist. As a result, controlled aerodynamic descent and aerobraking using body flaps and vertical landing is critical for its intended mission. The day began well, with 2 beautiful Starship prototypes standing side by side at their launch pad in Boca Chica, Texas. As we saw in their prior attempt, SN8, the flight went perfectly, except for the final landing attempt. SpaceX is relying on a very tight and dangerous last-minute flip maneuver that doesn't give them much time at all to correct their orientation from a horizontal belly flop skydive that's designed to maximize their aerobraking upon orbital re-entry into a vertical alignment required for the preferred vertical landing attitude. Everything had to perform exactly optimally for this maneuver to work, because they leave it very late in the cycle, below 1 kilometer height. When Elon Musk first introduced this maneuver to be used ultimately on both Earth and Mars landings, a lot of people had a sinking feeling in their gut, precisely because everything had to go right within a 30-second time frame. There is literally no excess time available to correct or compensate for any deviation, and when a spaceship comes in this fast and this hot, that's usually a recipe for disaster. In SpaceX's prior SN8 launch and attempted landing, we felt that the SN8 launch overall was very successful, but questioned why SpaceX didn't give themselves more room to maneuver by performing the flip maneuver earlier in the cycle and much higher up, perhaps at 5 km, just so that they have adequate time to correctly reorient and slow the spaceship down enough to stick the landing. SN9 unfortunately followed the exact same flight plan as its predecessor, with no change in this very dangerous landing maneuver, and the result was as expected. From what we can see, the Raptors performed perfectly in the second effort. There was no noticeable engine failure at any stage in the flight, and none in the final moments of descent, as was the case with SN8. There was, however, a noticeable difference in the timing and altitude at which the 2 Starships began their flip maneuvers. SN8 began its flip maneuver significantly higher up, and for that reason was almost able to stick its landing. We understand that SpaceX would like to use aerobraking as much as possible, as this is a fuelless way to slow the spacecraft down from orbital speeds, but they also need to reorient vertically much higher up just to give themselves time to compensate and slow down. That did not happen this time. It is our understanding that SN8 was originally slated to reach an altitude of 15 kilometers. In actual flight, it was capped due to FAA pressure to 12.5 kilometers. SN9 was delayed repeatedly by FAA restrictions, and ultimately the test was conducted with a 10-kilometer ceiling. It is speculation at this point, but it is highly plausible that SN9's ultimate failure may have resulted from FAA red tape and bureaucratic restrictions that unrealistically capped the flight to under 10 kilometers. At this height, it may well have been impossible for SpaceX to fully transition its spacecraft through the full range of maneuvers necessary for a safe and successful landing. SN9 came in hot and fast and simply had no time to even achieve correct vertical alignment before impacting the ground at high speed. Clearly, if SpaceX had been allowed an additional 5 kilometers to conduct its intended experimental flight regimen, the outcome may well have been a lot different. I hope everyone enjoyed that update from SpaceX. And if you like the content, please subscribe, give us a like, leave a comment. We will bring you more news from space as it happens. Good night, everyone.